Desiree's Dream. Chapter 15. A Disappointing Adventure. The sun had set on another uneventful day, and the air was heavy with the promise of a sultry southern night. The sky, painted with hues of amber and rose, heralded the coming of twilight as Desi, a spirited Desi with a penchant for mischief, found herself meditating on the monotony of school. Without Alex's gentle prodding, she knew she would be loitering in the alleyways, her playful nature leading her astray. Alex, the lanky youth with a heart as vast as the southern sky, was equally aware of the need to infuse their weekends with adventure. He understood that Desi's lively spirit required stimulation beyond the confines of the classroom. As Friday arrived, Alex picked up Desi after school, his deep drawl thick with anticipation. "You best get yourself to bed early tonight, Desi," he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Why's that?" Desi questioned, her curiosity piqued. "Well, now, we're fixin' to get up with the sun and head over to the beach," Alex replied, his voice warm with excitement. Desi's eyes widened at the mention of the beach, and her face lit up with pure, unadulterated joy. "The beach!" she exclaimed, her voice shrill with delight. She nearly toppled out of the wagon, her enthusiasm bubbling over. "Hold on, Desi, don't go losin' your head now," Alex cautioned, his tone playful yet concerned. Overcome with excitement, Desi struck a dramatic pose, one hand on her forehead and the other on her chest. "Oh, we're finally going to the beach," she proclaimed. Alex, ever the gentleman, was taken aback by her emotional response. "If you'd rather not, we can just stay put," he offered, his deep-set eyes searching her face for any sign of disappointment. But Desi, realizing her exaggerated display, quickly changed her tune. "I'm sorry, so sorry. I'll be good, I promise," she assured him, her head resting gently on his shoulder as she gazed up at him with hopeful eyes. The following morning, while the sun was still a mere promise on the horizon, Desi was already astir, bustling about with eager anticipation. The journey to Dauphin Island was lengthy, 28 miles on dusty roads, with 3 sturdy bridges and a ferry ride ahead. Desi's mind wandered to the pre-war days when she had visited the island as a young child. She couldn't recall the details, but the whispered tales of its beauty and the mysterious allure of the ferry ride ahead filled her with excitement. As Desi bustled, Alex stirred from his slumber, his lanky frame unfolding from the confines of his box. He stretched his limbs, his joints popping with the familiar comfort of a well-loved routine. "Come on now, Alex, we best be gettin' a move on," Desi urged, her voice tinged with impatience. Alex strolled to the wagon, his movements slow and deliberate as he finished loading their daily provisions. Fresh fruit, crisp vegetables, bread, and cheese filled a basket, while a jug of apple cider and water canteens promised to keep them hydrated. They hadn't forgotten Droopy, the faithful horse with the drooping eyelid, who would carry them on their adventure. They packed hay for his comfort and set off on their journey, the rising sun casting long shadows in their wake. Finally, they were ready, and Alex helped Desi and Beauregard onto the wagon. As the miles ticked by, the initial excitement of the journey began to wane for Desi. Her bottom grew uncomfortable on the wagon seat, and she longed for relief. Before she could voice her discomfort, she spotted the perfect solution, the bed of straw in the back of the wagon. With a swiftness that surprised Alex, she jumped into the back, declaring, "Wake me when we get there, okay?" Alex, ever accommodating, grunted his assent, and Desi nestled into the straw, soon drifting off to sleep as the wagon rumbled down the road. The journey was tedious, marked by frequent stops and Desi's intermittent dozing. As they approached Foul River, the horse, weary from the long trek, pulled over to quench its thirst. Alex, taking advantage of the respite, disappeared into the woods, leaving Desi to stretch her limbs and yawn sleepily. Upon his return, he found Desi wide awake, her arms raised over her head as she stretched out the kinks from their travels. "If you need to relieve yourself, best head into the woods over yonder," he advised, his voice tinged with the wisdom of their outdoor adventures. Ever impetuous, Desi jumped down from the wagon and ran towards the bushes, calling back, "Hold your horses, I'll be back in a jiffy." Left to his own devices, Alex helped himself to one of the crisp apples Desi had packed. He sat on the wagon and bit into the fruit, the juices exploding on his tongue. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air, originating from the very spot where Desi had disappeared. Alex, startled, spat out the apple and looked towards the woods, his heart pounding. Another scream, more frantic than the last, echoed through the trees. Without a moment's hesitation, he leaped from the wagon and sprinted towards the source of the commotion. What he saw next froze him in his tracks. Desi came bursting out of the woods, her small frame moving faster than he had ever seen. Her face contorted with fear, her hands wildly swatting at her head and face as if she were under attack. Then, Alex noticed the swarm of bees buzzing angrily around her. Without a moment's pause, he turned and sprinted towards the river, hollering, "Follow me, Desi, quick!" They plunged into the calm waters, the bees circling above before finally retreating. Dripping wet and breathless, they emerged from the river, their hearts pounding. They peered cautiously in all directions, ensuring the bees had departed. With wary steps, they returned to the wagon and climbed aboard, urging Droopy to a swift pace as they left the scene of their close encounter behind. The dust kicked up by their haste clouded their vision as they fled, and it wasn't until Alex deemed them safe that he pulled over to check on Desi. He looked at her, his heart aching at the sight of her trembling form, her eyes brimming with tears, and her arms and face marked with angry red bumps. "Oh, you poor thing," he exclaimed, his voice thick with compassion. Desi, overcome with relief and emotion, buried her head against his arm and wept. Desi's tears eventually subsided as the miles ticked by, and she found solace in sleep, her head resting gently against Alex's arm. The gentle rhythm of the wagon lulled her into a peaceful slumber. It wasn't long before they reached Alabama Port, and Alex gently roused Desi from her nap. She blinked sleepily, her eyes flitting open to meet his caring gaze. "Are we there?" she asked, her voice soft and groggy. "Almost," he replied, his voice gentle as he glanced down at her. "We're near the ferry." "How are you feeling?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Desi, still groggy, lifted her eyes and managed a small smile as she replied with a single word, "Ouch." Alex shifted in his seat, unable to ignore the discomfort his body was experiencing after the long journey. He offered Desi a gentle smile, his eyes conveying his empathy. Together, they arrived at a general store with a pier reaching out into the bay, where they hitched Droopy and went inside. Alex approached the counter, eyes scanning the store for signs of the much-anticipated ferry. "Is this where the ferry to the island departs?" he asked the man behind the counter. The man looked up, his eyes exchanging apology and concern. "Yes, laddie, but I'm afraid it's not sailing today. The bay's too rough, and there's a storm brewin'," he replied, shaking his head. Desi, who had been hovering nearby, overheard every word. "We can't go to the beach today?" she asked, her voice small and hopeful, even as she sensed the impending disappointment. The man shook his head, offering an explanation that sent a shiver down their spines. "We just got a telegram that a storm's hit South Florida, and it's headed this way. Best get yourselves back where you came from and find shelter." Without another word, Desi and Alex bolted from the store, their minds racing with memories of the terrible storms that had ravaged Mobile in the past. They didn't need any further prompting. With swift efficiency, they untethered Droopy and turned him towards the city, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake as they raced against the impending storm. And so, their beach adventure would have to wait, but not forever. They would journey again a year later under clear skies and calm waters. They swam in the crystal-clear Gulf, their laughter ringing. They walked along the shore, their feet sinking into the soft sand and collecting seashells, each a memento of their long-awaited adventure. But for now, the memory of their narrow escape from the bees and the looming storm would have to suffice, a tale to be retold and cherished in the years to come. As the days wore on, Desi's restlessness only grew. The school offered little excitement, and her wanderlust began to stir once more. She often found herself daydreaming, imagining far-off places and adventures with Alex. Though somewhat marred by the bee incident and the storm, the beach trip had only fueled her desire for exploration and fun.